Good night. This is U.S. Immigration Attorney Sharifa Tharpe. I am here live to take your U.S. immigration related questions. Go ahead, put your questions in the comments and I will answer your questions. I want to formally introduce myself. I'm U.S. Immigration Attorney Sharifa Tharpe. I help clients to get their status and green card in the United States. And I also come on here around 9 p.m. Eastern Time to answer your U.S. immigration related questions and also to give you good information about the immigration process. Last night, I talked about the adjustment of status process. That's the process of applying for permanent residence while you're in the United States. Tonight, I'm going to be talking about consular processing. So with consular processing, it's the process of applying or petitioning for a relative who is in another country, and they are going to go through the process, go to the consulate or the embassy to attend their final interview and get an immigrant visa to come to the United States. So I'm going to go through that process, but let me remind you that you are my priority and I want to hear your questions. So no, it doesn't matter that your questions are not related to what I'm talking about. Still put it in as long as it's immigration related. So if my boyfriend comes here and we get married, can he stay? So now if your boyfriend comes here with the intention of staying and he comes here on a visitor's visa, you would have to be very careful because that can be construed as fraud. If he comes in on a temporary visa with the intention of getting married and overstaying. And so you want to make sure that you approach the situation in a way that's going to make your process successful. And so, yes, usually spouses of U.S. citizens who are here, who end up having changed circumstances, who end up getting married, or people come here, they end up falling in love and getting married and staying. They are allowed to adjust status, and I have had my clients successfully adjust status. However, just booking a ticket for your boyfriend to come, get married, and file the papers right away could be construed as fraud. And so what I encourage you to do is schedule a consultation and get legal advice about your process to make sure that you fully understand the immigration consequences and what the process that you have to pursue based on your circumstances. So great questions. Keep those questions coming. Now let me take a minute to tell you how you can schedule a consultation. You can do that by going to the link in my bio. It's going to take you to the website. At the website, you're going to see a contact form, online chat, and a phone number. All three of those lead to the scheduling coordinator, who will then schedule your appointment, and then we can talk more about your circumstances, and I can advise you personally. Because remember, the information here I'm giving you is general, it's helpful information, but it's not personal legal advice. That's where you should schedule a consultation. So keep those questions coming, and thanks so much for the emojis and the good vibes. I appreciate it. Now keep those. You're welcome, Ayekas. Or Ayek. It's nice. It's very nice to be helpful, and you're very welcome. Now, I'm talking about consular processing, right? So it's the process where your relative is in your relative. So, and I'm going to narrow it down today. You can do this for your relatives, but I'm going to narrow it down to the marriage-based consular processing, where you're applying for your spouse. You're either a green card holder. Yes, green card holders can apply for their spouse. Or you are a U.S. citizen who wants to apply for their spouse, but they are in another country, and that's okay. The only thing is they will have to wait it out in their home country until the process is complete. Right now, as things are, we're looking at an average of 18 to 24 months for this process to be completed, this marriage-based process. Now, I want to just bring something to your attention. Now, spouses of residents, right now it's current. That means that there's no wait list for an immigrant visa number. And that's good news, because I get the question, what takes this process so long? Well, a part of the problem is waiting for that immigrant visa number. And so right now, there's no wait list. And that means that once the petition is processed and approved, it goes straight through to the National Visa Center and then gets straight in line for an interview at the embassy after the National Visa Center has collected all the documents they need to proceed with the interview. So keep that in mind. If you, not only U.S. citizens can apply for their relatives, for their spouse, U.S. green card holders can also apply for their spouse as well. Now, at the point that you've determined that you would like to go through consular processing, it's not possible for your spouse to be here in the United States, and so you have to go through consular processing. The next thing is, what does this process look like? So first is the process is the first step in the process is to prepare and file the I-130. The I-130 petition is that first petition. It's the petition for your qualifying relative. And a part of it is to, of course, fill out the form, but also to submit strong evidence to show that your marriage is real. Preparation is key, and it sets the tone for the rest of your application process. So it's very important that you get legal advice, get legal representation to make sure you're approaching your situation, your particular situation in the right way, and that you are protected through the process. Now, once that is filed, the petition is filed on behalf of your relative who is outside of the country. It goes through the process at the USCIS. The USCIS Service Center would be here in the United States. So they first review it, make sure that they are convinced that you do have a qualifying relationship, in this case, a bona fide marriage. Once they've determined that yes, this is a real bona fide marriage, they then approve the petition. And once it's approved, it gets sent to the National Visa Center. The National Visa Center then is like the middleman between you and your spouse and the U.S. Embassy. The National Visa Center, once your case is ready to be processed, they coordinate with you to get the required documents to forward it on to the embassy for the interview. Now, they usually don't schedule the interview until they get all the documents that they need. These documents are going to include civil documents. So birth certificate, it's going to include marriage certificate, it's going to include the Affidavit of Support, which is very important because without a complete Affidavit of Support, you will not be scheduled for the interview. And then also, even if you submit all the parts of an Affidavit of Support, if you don't meet the requirements of the Affidavit of Support, that could lead to a denial when you get to the interview, and that can be a very unpleasant surprise. So the Affidavit of Support the Affidavit of Support here is that document that the petitioner has to complete that shows that they make, thanks so much for the rose, I appreciate it, that they make enough funds to be able to, or make enough income to be able to support their immigrant spouse. If the petitioner, the U.S. citizen or resident spouse doesn't make enough, that's okay. You can find a sponsor who does make the required amount to be able to sponsor the immigrant relative. Now, as a side note, how do you know whether your petitioning spouse makes enough money to apply for you, or whether they're going to need a co-sponsor? You can go to uscis.gov. If you go to the I-864P form, you can search it in the search bar of the uscis.gov website. you're going to see a chart. That chart is going to tell you how much your petitioning spouse should be making based on the state they live in and based on the household, the number of people in their household. So for example, it's going to be your spouse, any children or dependents, and then yourself. So that is how the household is counted. Now, once you look at that chart, you're going to be able to tell whether they make enough, and if they don't make enough, then you know you're going to need a co-sponsor to be able, who does make that amount, to be able to make up for the lack of income on your spouse's end. That's just a side note. This affidavit of support is required in both the adjustment of status as well as the consular process. Now, to get this petition approved, don't get me wrong, it's not just an instant process where it's as soon as you submit the I-130, it gets approved. Unfortunately not. It does, right now, it is taking over a year for it to be approved, just because of the backlog. But once it's approved and it goes to the National Visa Center, then it's going to take a week or a few weeks to get your stuff together, to make the payment, because yes, the fee, an additional fee is due to the National Visa Center, by the way, when they start to work on your case. So $445 right now, that fees can always change, so you always have to check. But $445 would be due at the point that it's moved to the National Visa Center and they're ready to process your case. So at that point, you gather all the documents. You would then be going to the waiting for an interview to be scheduled. The interview is not scheduled right away just because they have to, you basically are go in line to get an interview date. Right now, because they're trying to catch up on all the cancellations from the COVID or the pandemic, and also the backlog that exists previously, you could be looking at 3 months to even a year before you can get an interview, unfortunately. What if the immigrant makes more money than the spouse? Can the immigrant act as financial sponsor? So the immigrant can use their assets to show, because remember that when the person, if they have a job, for example, if they're going to carry that job to the United States and continue working in the United States, that could possibly be presented as income, additional income by the immigrant. But keep in mind that if you're going to lose that job when you move, then it's probably not going to be counted, because that income won't be there when you become a green card holder in the United States. If you do have assets, especially if you co-own assets together, that can be counted as well. But keep in mind that the petitioner is who they really want to see can prove that income, because it's the immigrant that's going to be coming to the United States and is going to be dependent. Most times they're going to be dependent on the spouse. And so they do want to see the spouse's affidavit of support to see how much they make as well. So keep those questions coming. I am here to answer your immigration questions. So I have been finishing up the topic of consular processing. That's a process of applying for your spouse to come to the United States. Now, Nicole Smith, thanks for sharing the live. Now, I want to go back to Yorona. Now, if the immigrant spouse is in the United States and they currently have a job and they're going to continue to maintain that job, they can use that income in the affidavit of support as well. So now, at the point that the National Visa Center gathers all of this additional information, they send it to the embassy and schedule the appointment. From there, when you do get that letter, it's going to have instructions on what to do next. It's it's going to be your medical exam, so you have to schedule that right away. I have been seeing where medical exams are now backed up, and so some people are getting their medical exams they don't get it until after the interview, which can be irritating because it just delays your process. When you go to the interview and if you don't have a completed medical, they're gonna put a hold on your application and tell you to send it in when you do the medical, and at that point they would approve it if you qualify. So they're not gonna approve the application without that completed medical. How long does NVC take? So the NVC, it depends, right? It can take months. So I'm seeing an average of about 3 months for them to review documents and then see and make sure it's complete. But even at the point that they tell you, oh, we reviewed everything, it's complete, now we're ready to schedule your interview, you could be waiting another set of months, another 3 months, and as I said before, even a year. It could take up to a year. Now, if you make any mistakes, you submit wrong documents, or they reject, and the National Visa Center rejects the documents, that can lead to even more painful delays. So, very important that you are vigilant, that you get representation through the process, someone who knows what they're doing to reduce the stress on you, reduce the risk of delay and even denial. So at the point that you finish your medical and then you gather all your documents to take with you to the interview, the officer is going to make sure you qualify. They're going to ask you questions about your spouse, about your relationship. They're going to ask you questions about your background. They're going to review your application to make sure everything is accurate. And then they're going to give you a decision. Hopefully it's an approval. In the case that it's an approval, they take your passport, and then they take your passport to process it. They put an immigrant visa stamp in your passport. And when you get it, so for example, in Jamaica, you get it back by DHL. So DHL would either call you to come pick up your package, and that's going to include your passport and a package that you must keep sealed to take with you to the United States. That visa, immigrant visa that's stamped in your passport, only allows you a limited amount of time to hop on the plane and get to the United States. So you have to pay attention to that. If it does expire on you, you're looking at possibly having to start over the process again, which can be painful. So you don't want it to be your fault that you missed the deadline to get to the United States. So at that point, once you do get to the United States, and they process your application, so they'll take that envelope from you. It has all the documents from your application. They review it, process it, and then they send you on your merry way as a new permanent resident of the United States. How long does it take for someone who is living in the USA already to get a green card? So happy love, it depends on how you're applying. So I wouldn't have a definitive answer for you unless I know how you're applying, how do you qualify. Okay, so marriage through an American citizen, you could be looking at 18 months to 24 months. I have seen as short as 9 months, but keep in mind that because of the backlog, you could be looking at an average of a year and a half. So great questions. I have completed the information. So when they say annual income, is it gross or net? So they are going to look at your, so the net after taxes on your tax return, and they're also going to be looking at it on your pay stubs to determine whether you make enough. So, and on the tax, when they're looking at your tax returns, they are looking at the adjusted gross income, which is after taxes. If they put an extension of date in your passport, can that affect you later? So it depends on what the context is, Nicole Smith. So if they put an extension of a date, is it an extension of your passport date, or is it an extension of your visa? I'm not sure what the context of that is. That I would have to know a lot more detail to be able to tell you if there are going to be any future consequences in that situation. So I have completed the consular processing, and I am going to head over to Instagram now to continue my live, because I also do a live there. You can hop on over there. Our conversation does not have to end here. Hop on over to Instagram. You can follow me there. I post most of my content there now, so you can go, you can get updated information there. You know, lately I've been getting a lot of questions about, you know, to request to post videos about certain issues. I post videos on Instagram, and so you can follow me there, and you could possibly see a video that speaks directly to what you're going through. So join me there. I'm the immigration attorney. So no extension of date on my American visa. So if it is something that they provided an extension to you for, there should not be any future repercussions. Just make sure that you keep all your documentations to prove that you got this extension, that you filed for it timely and properly, just in case there are any misunderstandings in the future. But that is usually that is the correct thing to do. Hi Jay Hind, is to apply for an extension before you overstay, because that then allows you to be compliant with the terms of your visa, and then they're not so much on edge about you overstaying the time that the officer gave you to stay in the US. So I hope to see you over on Instagram. Now, if you know that you're going to need personal legal advice, highly recommend you do get personal legal advice, because remember, all the information I'm giving you here is general information. It is not personal legal advice, so you shouldn't act on it until you actually get legal advice. You can do that by going to the link in my bio. It's going to take you to the website where you'll see 3 ways to get in touch with a scheduling coordinator who is available up until 11 p.m. Tonight. Tomorrow, the scheduling coordinator is available from noon to 5 p.m. and on Sunday, noon to 5 p.m. So you can always call there. So ma'am, if someone withdraw I-130, alien relative file and reinstated, and again, he's going to withdraw. So Jay Hind, schedule a consultation. That sounds more like a more complex process. And in order to tell you what can happen and what the solution could be, I need to do a consultation with you. So that's what I was just talking about, how to do the consultation. Nicole Smith, you're welcome. So go to the link in my bio, goes to the website, and you can also call that number that's all over my videos, and you'll get the scheduling coordinator, or if you're calling after hours, the after hours receptionist. So username 202. If you go to the I-864P form on the uscis.gov website, you'll be able to find the chart that gives the income based on household size and the state that you're living in. So have a good night, everyone. I'll see you tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern, and I hope to see you on Instagram in a minute. Bye-bye.